Hello, beautiful people. If you have listened to this podcast before, you've likely heard me mention the book Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. That's why this episode is so cool, because this was a book that I used to personally transform my life. And just 11 or 10 months later, after reading it, do I have a conversation with the author. And the conversation did not disappoint. In this conversation, we spoke about the nature of reality. We spoke about some of Kamal's experiences, and we spoke about creation. And I am so grateful for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode or you have thoughts about it, let me know on Twitter. @HeyDannyMiranda is the best place to give me feedback about the episode. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I cannot wait for you to listen to this conversation with Kamal Ravikant.
Interesting people, thought-provoking conversations, nutrition for your brain. Journey through the minds of the world's top performers and discover what it really takes to achieve your highest version. This is the Danny Miranda Podcast.
Kamal, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this. I really appreciate it.
That's my pleasure, man. You've been very persistent and patient, so I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And your book just helped me. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on it. Helped me in such a way, such an incredible way, where I was in my darkest moments and really found the book and saw a light in the book. And it was just from looking at your situation and comparing it to mine, did I say to myself, okay, this guy has it much worse in this situation than I do. So let me just apply this practice. And it leads me to ask, when did your inner journey begin? Before all this, but when did your inner journey really begin?
I think life is an inner journey, so I'm not exactly sure. It's always been an inner journey. I've always been someone who's always just trying to figure life out, just curious about life and what the whole thing's about. So I don't have a clear answer, man. Always.
You've been on the path since early days of Kamal.
Yeah, I was always that kid just trying to why am I here? I just try to figure the whole thing out. What is this whole show about? How do I get better? How do I make this better? I was always that guy.
Yeah.
I guess it worked, it worked out.
What do you mean by that?
In a sense, well, I write about it, and it's a passion of mine. So it's what I've written about is what I've actually learned on my own for myself. And the fact that I just, I've also obsessively studied the craft of writing, so it allows me to then share in a way that's very easy and simple and approachable, worked out. I never set out to write these kind of books. I swear to God, I set out to be a literary fiction writer, not write like a well-known self-help book. In fact, I think one of the reasons it does so well is because I'm not a self-help writer. It's not written from the perspective of someone trying to give you self-help. It's written from the perspective of a guy who just works on himself, who figured something out that really helped him and is really just sharing it.
In doing my research for this conversation, I stumbled upon that you read Hemingway 20 or 30, 40 times, like one book 20, 30, 40 times. Is that true?
Oh, way more than that. Hemingway was the first one I studied in the craft of writing. The man was a master, and he influenced modern American literature. It's that clean, clear, precise writing that came from him. And before him, it was all flowery, this kind of flowery, flowing prose, where his thing was you get in the emotion and the truth and the essence of what you're saying in the simplest, clearest words possible. And just he could just write devastating beauty, and he could write about war and this and that, and just it's so clean. And I fell in love with his writing. It was the style of writing that I was drawn to. And then as a writer, Then you find other writers you fall in love with, and poets and so forth. But he was the first one, and I'm really glad because that built in me that this foundation of just clean, clear prose. So yeah, I've
What
read his work. I've read his work obsessively for years.
what would you recommend to someone who's never read any Hemingway and wants to get started?
I would say his Nick Adams short stories, because they're really they're one story could be just about Nick Adams going fly fishing, or another story could be just like him and his friends talking about this girl that Nick broke up with, and they're kind of sad over. Just like Hemingway kind of like grows along with Nick Adams, and he writes there's a two short stories called The Big Two-Hearted River, Part One, Part Two, and there's no dialogue that happens in there. It's just about the guy coming and going on a fishing trip. But the way Hemingway describes the land and what is actually happening, he's actually describing what it's like to come back from war, what you carry with you, but not a single piece of dialogue, just that land and what the guy's doing. And it's almost kind of like just letting it go, but without saying it at all. It was incredible.
Sounds beautiful, and I can't wait to check it out. On the topic of writing, I also found in my research for this conversation that you ended up joining a Black women's writing group, but
Well, yeah, of course.
but that seems pretty odd. You're not Black or a woman, so how?
Not
Tell
that
me
I'm
the
aware of.
story.
No, no,
Tell me the story behind that.
man, I'm like a huge, I'm very proud of that actually. I was in Philadelphia, I was consulting out there, and this is when I was building startups in the Valley and the dot-com crash had happened. And I was doing some consulting there, and I missed California, and I wanted to go back. My boss there, she loved me, she wanted me to stay, and she knew that I was working on writing, and she knew to get me how to get me to stay. She had to make me fall in love with something in Philly. And so she introduced me to a friend of hers who was a writer and said, "Hey, see, they had a writing group. See if, she was like, can you see if you guys would want to meet Kamal?" So they met me just to more like as writers, and we got along so well. They're like, "Well, you got to be part of our writing group," but it was the Black Women's Writers Group. So we basically ended up calling it the Black Women's Writers Group and Kamal, and it was awesome. I mean, those, some of them have published New York Times bestsellers. They were amazing women, absolutely amazing women. It was such a joy to be part of that. I have such fond memories of that group.
What did that group give you specifically? Just did you feel included and felt part of a group? How did that impact you?
In my writing, it was amazing to get feedback from them because I'm
Mm.
not Black and I'm not a woman. And a Black woman is a very special, special human being. And they have such life. They have such life in them. They've lived such lives, each one of them such interesting, different lives. And, one of them went to President Michelle Obama and went that track. Another one had like no education and just wanted to write and became like a published author where she originally sold a lot of her books on the side of the road until she became successful and then got published by mainstream publishers. It was just all these really interesting stories, and they were so full of life and so welcoming and loving. I absolutely loved every moment of it.
That's amazing. So still on the topic of writing, when we've DM back and forth, and at what time I asked you if you were writing, and you said I haven't been writing lately, and I'm curious what you do to get back onto your writing practice if you fall off of it for a set period of time because life gets busy.
You know what? It's not usually that life gets busy for me. It's like when I start to get inside me that I have something to say, something I
Mm.
want to say. Like I have a notes thing in my phone where I write in, but I don't consider that writing, because I'm not, it's just random snippets. It's not like every day you get up and you work on a piece. I haven't done that since I published Love Yourself in the beginning of 2020. Um, I think what it'll take for me is that something starts to build inside and say, okay, this is something I need to tell or I want to tell. And I haven't had that feeling. But interesting enough, something's been saying that inside. Like these little flashes of ideas have been coming. There's little flashes of like almost like little pages and chapters are coming. So when that happens, I usually start writing. And then we just start and it starts to flow and then you just keep with it.
Mm. You you said you were going to write a book, I believe, in November of 2020. Did you end up writing that book for yourself?
I wasn't writing a book per se, but I was just writing something for myself, like almost like a
Mm.
book can be anything, right? It's just pages full of words. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wrote for myself, purely just for myself. It was a fun exercise, where you just write. I know telling myself this will never see the light of day outside of me. It was a great practice.
You you also said that. Did you say that when you wrote "Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It"? Did you also
No,
say you knew it was going to see the light of day? You knew it was going to
no,
be.
I was just writing. I didn't have any plans with it.
Hmm.
But this was just a new exercise I tried in November. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll write, but I want to give myself the pressure of is this good or not? And I'm gonna just commit that I'm never gonna put this out. So then I'm just gonna write anything. And also I just want to write some truth to myself for myself. This
Yeah.
isn't for others. This is purely for me. And just a little from, and it was good. It was good practice.
Well, I love to hear that when you're writing. I love to hear it because, like I mentioned before, love yourself like your life depends on it. So, for people who aren't familiar, can you give the I love myself practice that you recommend in the book so everyone who's listening can have some sense of understanding what we're talking about?
I mean, look, I could, but it's actually hard. And there's a reason why I published an expanded version of it because there's so many nuances to it that I wanted to explain, right? It's not just, hey, walk around saying, I love myself to yourself like an idiot. That's not it. There's like nuances to it, and there's something in it, and including down to like making a commitment, how to forgive yourself, like clearing the past and then moving forward. It's a whole practice that I came up with for myself. It's very simple. It's an internal practice. It takes no time, but it really is a way. What it is a way you're training your mind and your heart to function in a way where it's wired to be. We just don't spend our time doing it. Everyone says to you, you should love yourself. Oh, great. Okay, how? What I did was I wrote the book that shows you step by step how. It's divided in three parts. The first part is shows you that I did it, where I came from, I did it. Second part is literally it's called the manual. It shows you how, step by step. It's a whole third of a book, so it's very hard to like break that down in interviews because it's like saying, hey, Kamal, teach us how to do really, hack squats. And, it's very hard to just
Hmm.
versus like showing a video and the proper alignment, whatever, because you just want to do it right. And then the third part is actually I show you how I do it in my mind because it's inner work, right? And
Mm.
so once you see it happening in someone's mind, by the time you're done, the whole goal is like you have the definitive book to or to actually go out and just do it and apply it to yourself and see how it works and it works. It really works. Like I have so many, the book does really well. I have all these emails, people like you reach out telling me how it worked for them. And it's not, like people reached out and originally like, oh, so what are you doing? You just walk around saying, I love myself, I like a parrot. I'm like, no, you don't get it. That's not, you read the book. Just read the book. Okay. Like, it's not like there's far easier ways to make a living than write a book. Trust me, I didn't do it for that. I spent a year on this draft, like this, writing, obsessed with writing to get it right. Just read the
Mm.
book and apply it. That's one thing about books. You get like anytime I read a book, I am getting someone's distilled knowledge and experience of years of their life,
Hmm.
within hours. So it's like what a gift, which is I'm not a fan of then giving sound bites from books because you don't sound bites don't change your life.
Mm.
You know, I was talking today, I had lunch today with a Hollywood producer, really good guy. We were talking about how stories, a book can literally change your life, can shift your life. Your life can be before and after you read a book. I can
Hmm.
say that about books in my life, and everyone I know can say that about books in their lives. That's the power of a book. So it kind of like it's like a little pet peeve of mine when people try to encapsulate an entire book into like like a soundbite or hey, let me explain the book to you. Like it's like The Alchemist, you know, probably my favorite book, right? Guy goes off in a search, a shepherd boy goes off in search of treasure, but it's so beautiful and deep, and
Yes,
there's literally lines in it on your 10th reading you will catch you never caught that will change your life, you know. So what?
absolutely.
So sorry my rant there, but it's really important that if someone wants to learn something from a book, go to the book, go to the source. You're getting like and trust me, I'm not trying to sell you a book here. It does fine, but it's like if you want to learn this, the the amount of time I spent working to get it right, to share exactly how to do it, it's a steal of a lifetime. This is the book I wish someone gave me, man, when I was a teenager. It would have drastically uh, changed the trajectory of my life. You know?
Well, I appreciate you going on that rant, and I appreciate you writing the book because it actually did change my life because of the honesty, because of the authenticity, because of the realness you put into every word. And my question to you though is, why do you think it's so awkward to say I love myself at first? Because it's so odd because we say I love you to people all the time, right? But why, when we first say it to ourselves, like when I first said it to myself, at least, I was like, this feels weird. And because it felt weird, then I started leaning into it. But I'm curious what you think the explanation is there.
Honestly, I'll tell you something, and I don't care why. I come from the startup world, and I care about results, right? I don't care about. I mean, one could go to therapy and figure out their thing, but I care more about do this to make me feel better, do this to make me better inside. Like when I came up with it, I was in a really dark place, and I could have just sat there and I'm not saying this is a substitute for therapy or something. I'm not a therapist, nor do I play one on TV. But I just went into what is I need to find out the solution. So we can have all these great, beautiful theories why. Let's just say it's the human condition.
Hmm.
You can have 50 people who don't love them, quote unquote, love themselves or have a hard time with thinking that, and they could have 50 different reasons. One could have been molested. One could have our dad was an alcoholic. One had a great childhood still. I don't think the reasons matter, but I think what matters is it's a human condition that we all struggle with, and like what is the solution? What can we do to be better?
Hmm. What? Yeah, go on.
I'm not answering your questions directly, am I?
That's completely fine, Kamal. That's the fun thing about a podcast. That's the fun thing about a conversation, right? Is
Yeah,
like you take it in whatever direction you want to go. And
but I am answering them honestly. So
yeah, and that's
yeah,
all that matters. And you wrote the book honestly, and you say the words honestly, and what you feel at the end of the day is what matters, not the question that I'm directing you, but the answer you feel in your heart. So, what did quarantine teach you about loving yourself?
well, quarantine for me was different. I was recovering from a real physical trauma. So for me, quarantine wasn't like for the rest of the world where everyone all of a sudden was outside shut in. I was recovering from severe physical trauma. And so my quarantine was just trying to heal my body and come back to life. So for quarantine, for me, was a lot of alone time. It's been a lot of alone time, but it's been alone time for a lot of people. So there's nothing special about that. What did it teach me? Nothing, just every day, just because I was struggling to just come back to life after significant, and it was a physical thing, and then that leaves an emotional thing, and just work. Literally, I worked on myself every day. It was some days better, some days worse. You just get up and then you continue working on yourself. Every day you get up, you work on yourself, you work on yourself, you work on yourself. I ate my own dog food. I applied what I wrote about. And that I think is key for helping me survive and get through what I went through. So for me, quarantine was very different than I would say a lot of people.
Hmm. When you were forced to, how many times have you been forced to go back to the practice when you fell off? And is that difficult for you to just realize like, oh my God, I'm not doing what I said I was going to do?
No, I used to beat myself up for it, but I realized the mind is very strong in its old habits, and I get lazy. And it's not like I didn't. I mean, once I came out of practice, I kept it, but I eventually got lazy.
Hmm.
Um, And then, something happened like in 2019 that had a really traumatic physical incident. And then it was a matter of I was just in survival mode, trying to
Mm.
heal, really from the trauma. There's nothing to do with loving yourself, but, it was loving myself that helped me emotionally, continue to work my way through it. because you have no choice. Then you're in survival mode when you're dealing with physical trauma.
So what happened with the, do you want to get into
I'd
that?
really
Okay.
rather not. I'm leaving it behind.
Totally understand. Totally understand. So let's see. If you were trying to, can you talk a little bit about the coincidences or the synchronicities, the magic, as you call it, that happens when you start loving yourself? Because this was,
Did you experience it?
I'm experiencing it right now in this moment, Kamal.
So why
And
don't you tell me? I mean, that's the beauty, right? It's
yeah,
like it's some for each one of us, the results are different.
yeah.
What I will say is that you start to realize that when you are in this state, this internal state, your life starts to mirror that state. And the deeper you go in that state, the more it mirrors it. That's when I realized, whoa, this show is more interesting than I gave it credit for. There's like a connection to this inside outside. Um, and I get emails from readers all the time, but the one of the reasons actually I didn't talk too much details, I use the word magic, is because what's one person, for example, one person, uh, a good financial day could be making $1 million. For another person, it could be a bad financial day,
Hmm.
making $1 million. So that's why it was like, look, just I started noticing things start to shift every time I went deep into this practice. It made me realize, and which is a fundamental concept, this practice is based on what someone told me, that life is from the inside out. You work on the inside, the outside mirrors it. And I've seen that enough. I've seen that happen the other way when I haven't my insides not been good and how the outsides mirror that. It's almost like you end up like shit. I have
Hmm.
responsibility. If I want to live, if I want a life that I want, I have responsibility to work on my inside to have that life. I'm not saying it's like um, it's hard, it's nuance. It's if it was obvious, we would all notice it and do it. But I think when you start doing a very intense practice, like that shifts you, that you start loving yourself, you start to notice things happen. Things just start to work for you. You start, the coincidences or whatever. And like I said, everyone's life is different. The details are different. The base fundamental human things are the same, but the details are different. But you start to notice just like, whoa, it's like there's this connection to what's happening on my inside. And
It's
that I actually have noticed again and again to the point it's just like I've just accepted it. And I use the word magic for it because I can't come up with any better word for it or a more honest word for it.
and like you were saying before, it's like you don't even want to ask why. You just want to say, keep going. Like whatever's happening right now, whatever magic is at whatever universe is working, can we just keep this rolling the same
Yeah,
exact, you know what I'm saying? And it's like
yeah,
it's just like you end up looking at your life, right? And you're like, who is living this life? Like, am I living it or am I watching someone live it? Because this doesn't seem real. And can you relate to that feeling?
yeah. I have at times, I really have at times. And it's just I constantly keep getting reminded of that, and it's like this figuring the self out, figuring one's connection to reality itself. I think that's a lifetime thing that we learn, we unlearn, we learn more, we unlearn, we learn more. Um, but yeah, that's a consistent thread I've noticed. The inside, the outside mirrors in some subtle, beautiful way, mirror, and sometimes very obvious ways. But you have to look back and be very honest with yourself. It mirrors the inside.
It's powerful stuff, man. It's really powerful stuff. One of the things that the practice has made me do is create. And I've never viewed myself as a creator, but now I view almost everything that I do as a creation in some sense. Like this conversation is a creation, writing, creation. So you've also said that if ever in pain, I think the best thing we can do is create something. Why do you think creation solves pain?
Actually, let me ask you a question. How did you, that's beautiful. The fact that all this that you're doing is creation. Um, that's you. I don't think I said that in the book. I think that's your thing.
And you said that in your second book, I believe.
Okay, yeah, different book.
I
Yeah.
switched books on you real quick.
Okay, got it. Got it. Because I'm like, wait a minute, I wrote the book. I'm thinking in my head, where did I write that? No, but I love the fact that you're looking at all this as creation. I think that's pretty powerful. Um, because in my mind, sometimes I only look as writing as creation, everything else I don't look as creation. So I like, for me personally, because writing's my jam.
Hmm.
But this is really cool. You're absolutely right. This conversation is a creation. What else do you look at as creation?
When I make a cup of coffee, I am creating something that wasn't there. When I am sending a text message, right? When I am uploading a new video to YouTube, when I am sending a tweet, is creation everywhere. And we sometimes belittle it like, oh, we're just having a talk, like, or oh, but the crazy thing is about creation, right? If you do it again tomorrow, you'll do it slightly differently. That's true for a piece of writing. That's true for this exact conversation. And so anything that you do slightly differently tomorrow, if it's the same time but you do it slightly different, that's creation, man. And so we're constantly creating. We are all creators in every moment. So I think it's incredibly powerful to view life that way, because if you view life as a creation, a constant creation, you are just constantly giving to yourself and loving yourself.
That's beautiful because, like, I mean, I think the act creating, when you're really creating something, it's a sacred act. And so this way, everything you're doing is a sacred act,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to the gym. You're creating the body you want, right? You're eating the right foods. You're creating that. Like you're creating a new body. You're creating a new you in every moment. And so I think it's just a very important part of life that like everything we do, so much of what we do can be considered creation. And so yeah, that's really important to me.
So all this time I spent on Clubhouse these days, that's creation.
Absolutely. The problem with it is you can't record it. It doesn't get saved anywhere, right?
You can choose to record it. I've
Oh,
recorded
okay.
rooms. You put in the
Gotcha.
title recording, and then just I my podcast equipment, I could use it to record it. In fact, my last podcast episode I put out was an amazing room I did called The Nature of Reality. And it turned out to be incredible. And I'm so glad I was happy to be recording it. Uh, so yeah, you
So
can.
so talk to me about that. The nature of reality. What did you find out in that clubhouse room?
Well, I opened it. I was going to do a private conversation with a friend of mine, and it was purely just to test my equipment to see if I could record off Clubhouse as a separate track. So, that would be a better audio quality if you can do multiple tracks. And I opened the room, and I was like, called him up. I was like, let's talk about the nature of reality. He's like, yeah, sure, man, with you, whatever. And and I opened the room, and I guess when you open the room, I must have chosen the wrong thing and opened a public room. So we hop in, and immediately, bam, like 30, 40, 50 people just stop popping in.
Oh
Next
my
thing you know, it's
gosh.
like 100 people just sitting there with, the topic is nature of reality recorded. I was like, well, let's go with it. So some people raised their hand. I pulled them up. And I was like, okay, all right. So like one by one, we had Siki Chen, Gary, Gary Tan, who's an amazing VC in Silicon Valley. Siki Chen's an amazing entrepreneur in the Valley. Justin Tan, founder of Twitch. We had my buddy Kevin Nations. We had these two women. One woman, it was her first night at Clubhouse. This was her first room. Another one, and this another guy, Caleb. Just like people, I just pulled them up. They were raising their hands, so I pulled them up, and I asked them the same question, which is, uh, when you look at the stars at night, when you're really just in your head looking at the stars at night, and you wonder, like, what is this whole thing all about? And that's the question we would go with. And we went deep into consciousness, meditation. I had Siki Chen read the Egg by Andy Weir, which is an amazing, amazing story, like 5 minute story that'll probably change your worldview, your life view. All around the concept of what is the nature of reality, what is God, the whole thing. It was great. So that was creation.
Hmm. The Egg. That's an incredible,
Oh my
incredible
God. Yeah.
YouTube. Everyone go check that out on YouTube right now. It'll just blow your mind. But going back to that question that you're asking to everyone, how would you answer it?
Well, it's I've answered it differently at different points in my life. It's funny, like I used now it seems like the stars, what I think about is like what I really think is and it's nothing that I think I came up with. It's more like something I've come to understand by studying others who've come up with it. And this is something that goes back in pretty much every culture, every mystic. They all say the same thing, which is that the whole thing is consciousness, and this is just conscious. We are all just expressions of consciousness experiencing itself. It's like I think it's, in the Hindus they say the Vedas. I think they say that God fractured itself into a bazillion different realities, that's the only way God can and forgot purposely so God can experience all this. Um, which is one way of saying consciousness. In fact, yeah. So this whole thing is just consciousness experiencing itself. But reality is a damn persistent illusion. You you stub your toes. Damn, it feels really real. So you can't just say like, well, it's all consciousness, it's all good, and just sit there and stub your toe. It's one thing to know theoretically. It's not thing to know it experientially. I have
Hmm.
experienced it a couple times, sometimes in my life. Um, to know more and more that I think it's more along this way. Um, but in the end, I don't think the hardware we have can fully take in what reality is. We're all just making best estimation. I think the brain and our senses can only process so much of what actually even just physical reality is.
Can you take us to a moment where you felt that, when you felt connected to all things, or you felt consciousness everywhere?
Well, it's not the word consciousness. Look, I've done ayahuasca, I don't know how many times, like 30, 40, 50 times. I've done it by myself in the middle of jungle and Tikal in Guatemala with like snakes slithering around the Mayan pyramids. I've done some crazy shit, man. Uh, I've done iboga, you know, I've played around with these things because I wanted to know what's inside. I really just wanted to know. And you see a lot, these journeys do show you a lot. I've done the toad and all that. But I think uh, mushrooms are fun. Uh, all these things kind of show you, kind of bring you to a connectedness. They make you feel a connectedness. That's you can't deny it. You feel
Mm.
it. Like that's why people call it spiritual awakenings of Taurus. Something you feel connected to something bigger. You realize you're not just like this meat suit running around. There's a connection, and that ultimately the connection you could call it consciousness. We're part of something bigger. Um, but I think the most I ever got was actually I went into study with the Bon, who are the mystics of Tibetan Buddhism, in 2019 in Nepal in Mustang Valley, and studied their process of awakening with them. And I tasted it, and in that moment, in that meditation, after about a week of training, and it's amazing. Their whole thing is designed to actually make you taste these things fast, to make you. That's their whole training. They've been around since before Buddhism came to Tibet, and they're the mystics of Tibetan Buddhism. And so you taste it, you realize the self disappears, and underneath is this all you disappear, and it's just this field of love and compassion.
Mm.
It's very interesting, and then when the self starts to appear again, it's like this. You just feel the love and compassion encompassing that self. Then eventually, the self starts to become stronger in the field, and then eventually the field disappears. The self clouds the field.
Mm.
But you realize like we talked about this in the in the episode, and Justin Tan has also studied with one of those guys, one of the Western guys who teaches that, and he said he's experienced it too, and he's like he felt the same thing. It's like It's so interesting that compassion is almost like an atomic unit of reality. The Buddhists always talk about compassion, but you just figure, yeah, okay. But no, it's like an actual thing. It's an actual like it's like runs through the fabric of reality. It's like a particle, like that. It's an actual thing, which really surprised me. The compassion, not just love, but compassion. You can, and there's no way everyone uses the same word to describe it too. So it's like,
Hmm.
it's holy cow, it's something. Um,
Yeah, my follow-up question is what's the difference between compassion and love?
I can't describe.
Yeah.
It's you got experience of it, but you knew that's what it was because it was a caring. It was a caring, like a deep understanding, caring that is more than love. Um, uh, yeah, yeah. But I
It's
think
hard.
all of us have experienced compassion, the feeling of compassion at some point. Words only take you so far. The words are literally like, the finger pointing at the moon. You still gotta go up there.
Yeah, it's incredible when what's your how do you take that feeling and then try to create that in a world of self?
Honestly, I haven't done it. I'm not very good at it. Um,
I
be
appreciate
honest,
the
man.
honesty.
I'll be honest, man. I'm a human being, man. I'm a Western guy, like maybe a month, 2 months after that, I was in a hospital dead, because of
Mm,
trauma. And then what I went through to
yeah.
pull me out of that and to save me, like, trust me, there was no compassion or whatever those feelings. It was just desperation and clinging to life. Um, and but yet, what helped me a lot was actually I was doing my practice that I write about. Just
Hmm.
in my mind, I was like, I can't let my mind devolve. I can't let this just hurt me so bad. Um, yeah. So honestly, I haven't gone back to that place, that meditation, since then. And I don't know. No, I don't even know if I ever will. I knew I tasted it. That was good. You know, that was nice. And I mean, I'm sure you carry all those things with you, like all these journeys that we do, like all these experiences we have. We carry some kernel of them within us that's activated through life. Maybe just remembering it and being conscious of it in meditation or just in life. Um, but I don't know if I'll go back to it. I don't know.
Do you think some of the most down moments are put there for our benefit or for our learning in some way?
By who?
I don't know.
Some trickster? Like what joker came up with this show? Like what the fuck? Excuse my language, but what
You're good.
freaking joker? I'm a writer. I could like this is the shit that whoever came up with. Like, geez. I mean, the Confederacy of Dunces of the Human Race. Like, like I mean, like come
Yeah.
on, you know? Like, I
Well,
mean,
we
and I'm
we
a very
create
positive person, but you know what I'm saying, right? You look at the Holocaust, you look at this and that, you're like, really? This is the shit you came up with? So I don't know. But if I ever end up in this situation, there is a conversation I'll be having.
yeah. I I just I think about, we I think about sometimes us in a video game, right? Like and we've created video games and look how far we've come, right? Is that what you think this is?
Well, that's Elon Musk's thing, right? We're in a simulation, and that's also goes back to the Vedas. I think it's just God experiencing itself, through all this, and this is all just a way to experience, a way to feel. Um, I don't know, but I would like to think that one can create a better simulation. What's wrong with just puppies and rainbows everywhere? Like, can whoever get tired of a puppy? Come on. So I don't know. So honestly, the cool thing about our like stumbling blocks left in our path to make us grow, I think it's a really shitty design if that's the case.
Hmm.
Um, I hope not.
So
Really, I mean, if I was designing this video game, I would do it differently.
how would you? What would you do
There'd be a
differently?
lot of
What would you?
puppies. There'd be puppies everywhere.
But don't you think you'd get? I don't know, just like
Border
you,
puppies? No one gets border puppies, man. Don't
you
trust
might
anyone who
not.
gets border puppies.
You wouldn't get bored of it, but at some point you'd be like, "Where's the challenge in this? Where's the
You ever
what?
try
What?
taking care of a puppy? You ever
I,
train a puppy?
I have not."
It's nonstop challenge, man. You got challenges. You're spending half your time cleaning up poop off your rug. It's okay. So I'm joking around, and I get what you're saying, but I don't buy that whole thing about how just like the whole creation is just. I think honestly, if life is from the inside out, we're the ones to throwing the stumbling blocks in our paths. I look back at
Mhm.
my life, and I started like just tell myself I created all of this. Like in a sense, not like not some narcissistic sort of way, but more like somehow I'm responsible for everything. What that does is it allows me to then take any blame of anything on the outside. And I've been through some real shit. So it's not like I'm some Pollyanna who can say that. But what it does is then just says, okay, then what can I do to then grow from this, be better from this, and then hopefully create a better future? Who can I be to create a better future? So that's the way I like to live rather than think, something is placed in my path, quote unquote, for my growth. Um, if that's the case, I want puppies and rainbows and lots of love, you know.
Yeah, it's fair. I just okay, but forget the pain leading
Uh-huh.
for a purpose, but do you ever think that you did things in your past for a future version of yourself?
Um, that's an interesting question.
So I'll give you an example
Go
so you
for
can
it.
think on it. In 2009, I wrote this blog post about Gary Vaynerchuk. I was 13 years old. I have no idea what I was doing watching Gary Vaynerchuk videos, but for something in me attracted me to him.
Hmm.
Fast forward 11 years and I tweet out that blog post. It leads to him following me. It leads to him eventually coming on the podcast, and I couldn't help but think, did my 13-year-old self write that so that my 25-year-old self could experience that moment? Does that make sense?
It
And
makes perfect sense.
have you ever
But
thought of anything similar?
I would think it's the other way. I would think the 13-year-old created that, and that led, as a natural progression of things, led to you doing it. But I don't think it's not like like a conscious God 13-year-old doing that. I've been watching Christopher Nolan movies lately. He did Interstellar, he did Tenet,
Mm-hmm.
and he plays around with the whole concept of time.
Yep.
And it plays with they were going backwards and forward in time and reaching across time, like space and distance. And I was like, man, I'd love to talk to this guy, have a conversation with him, because this is a guy who's thought about what the nature of reality, and to the fact that time is not a linear concept, not just in theory, but in a practicality in his movies, where it becomes a real thing. Um, you know, in that case, who knows? Uh, I don't know, man, but that's a hell of a question you asked. I like it a lot.
Would you say that's a hell of a what?
Hell of a question you asked. I like it a lot.
Yeah, thank you. It's just maybe it's all happening at the same time, right? Maybe
That's what they say. Um, uh, the whole thing, everything exists at the same time. It's just our hardwire makes us experience it linearly.
so trippy. I mean, could you break that down for someone who hasn't thought that much about it?
Well, I mean, I, I don't know what the line is, physics versus mysticism, and I don't want to be the guy, starting to talk about mysticism using physics, because it's a very slippery slope, and often it's inaccurate. Um, but I've read many different theories, especially the mystics. They've always said it, but also I've read in physics. that there's just infinite realities. Well, there's infinite realities also, but just time. That time is in itself is not, first of all, it's a relative. If you're getting closer to a black hole, how fast you're moving in time versus, compared to someone who's here. Just watch Interstellar if you don't know what I'm talking about. You
Mhm.
you learn this, right? So time is not an exact fixed state, and that um, one of the theories I've read is that, which I kind of really like a lot, is that everything that could exist already exists. And it's just how we're processing it, we're moving through it, our hardwire can only experience it in a certain way. Um, I can't speak way more to that, but it's worth Googling and going down that rabbit hole. It's in a very interesting rabbit hole, and it kind of screws with your mind a bit, which is good. It's good to shake your mind up a little bit. Now, does that change your day to day? Do you still get up and brush your teeth in the morning and all that? Do you still watch the sun go down versus the sun go up? When it should be going down. So it doesn't change that, but something in your back, the more you can shake your head a little bit and realize there's something more to this whole show than what I see and sense with my five senses, the more it just starts to add a little bit of wonder
Mm.
and a little bit of sense of magic to life. And you start noticing like your flow and your play with it. I notice that sometimes. I mean, I keep these little notes to myself about it. I don't really talk about it because it's just my own personal observations, but I notice these things. And is it me that is it the fact that I'm just making leaps in my mind that I'm just full of shit, or that I'm experiencing this? Well, I don't know, but it's up to me how I want to experience how I want to label it. But try it and you'll see. And it's like a nicer way to go through life. You don't feel like just this human being, walking around stubbing their toe. There's something here. There's something more interesting than just what you're reading on Twitter, on news, and people yelling at each other. There's a flow to things that's subtle, like an underlying layer. I think it's worth all of us to experience it a little bit. Psychedelics do that for people often.
Hmm.
Which is why all of a sudden, like, why a lot of people look at psychedelics as life changing.
You raise a point about wonder that I really want to harp on because I asked, are you familiar with the work of Gay Hendricks?
I know the name.
He is a psychologist, is, I believe 75 years old, and just a really wise, loving, kind man who's written Conscious Living and The Big Leap. And I asked him, hey, Gay, what would you recommend for someone who is feeling okay, but wants to be in that place of openness and that place of love? And he said, the key that you're looking for is wonder. So it's very similar to what you just said. And it makes me think that the more we can lean into that wonder and loving yourself did that for me, right? Because it made me
Hmm.
ask, okay, I love myself. And then all this magic is happening. What's going on? There's a little bit,
Yeah.
there's wonder going on now. Like, why is this happening? Okay, let me lean into this. Why is, so wonder is such a key. You've also found that to be the case?
It is. And I think wonder is something that happens naturally when you go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You don't have to force it. Kids naturally have it. And I think
Yeah.
people who are older have it. It's all of us are stuck somewhere in the middle that almost
Yes.
have to go down these rabbit holes to experience them. But I love hearing the fact that you got to experience the magic because, literally when I first talked about this and put the book out, I was like, I didn't know. Like I knew this happened for me, you know, and I just kind of was telling friends about it. It was happening for them, but it was one thing to do that. Then it's another thing for it to happen to like people all over the world, right? And it is, and it's amazing. And it's like these little sprinkles of magic everywhere, just because people are reading my book and applying it. It's awesome. So thanks for telling me, man.
How does that feel, right? You wrote a book and then you're hearing this voice on the other end of the phone that if you didn't write that book or if you didn't publish that book, this would never have happened, or you wouldn't be hearing that. How does that feel to you as the author, the creator of this work?
Well, look, I've gotten a lot of emails telling me
Yeah.
people telling me that they would have killed themselves if they hadn't read this book.
Hmm.
Literally, I get so many emails saying you saved my life. Literally those words, you know. And it's actually interesting because I'm someone who's considered ending his life at times, you know, in his life, and so I've struggled with that. And part of the practice I came with the practice was to save myself,
Hmm.
and so I was sharing something that was so in some ways transformative in an effort to save myself that has saved others. You know, that's mind blowing, and it's absolutely mind blowing. You never get used to it. Yeah, I mean, at least I don't. Um, because these are people from all over, different walks of life. I've had parents email me said they read the book and their kid committed suicide and how they wish their child had read my book.
Oh.
You know, um, and the book is not about suicide at all. There's nothing to do with it.
Hmm.
The book's about this fundamental thing that kind of creates life in you. Um, yeah. No, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But it's not like I walk around all day patting myself on the back. I'm
Of
quite the
course.
opposite, man. Because I wrote the book. The book's been out for a while, so it's not like I kind of don't rest on my laurels. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
what now? What do I want to create now? And that's I'm kind of like struggling a little bit because I haven't created. Although I'm
Hmm.
doing my venture capital stuff, and that's been taking up my time, and that's doing really well. But I do miss the writing. Uh, um, so I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna ramble now, so I'll stop.
You're
That's a
good,
great
man.
question. Yes, very good questions, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I created something called the 3 month rule
Hmm.
because of the book, because of the insights that I gained in the book. And the 3 month rule is basically this. If you look at someone who has lifted weights their entire life, but they do it for 10 years straight, let's say, but after 10 years and 3 months, they stop. And so they haven't lifted weights for 3 months, that person is going to be different. Same thing with meditation. If you go 3 months without doing some of these activities that are helping you and propelling you forward, you will feel the effects of that. So you talk about in the book about how it's about greasing the groove, how it's about doing it over and over, how it's a constant practice, and how it's not just something you could do once. And if you think about it, that applies to so many habits. And have you also seen that it's a 3 month period of like you do something and then you see the result 3 months later? I'm not sure if I explained that well, but
No, you did. I don't know if it's 3 months. For me, it was literally a month but
mhm.
this practice took me a month to really change things. So I think you can do it. Honestly, a month's enough. Well, a month's enough also. But I do know that in anything in life, if you go the opposite route, you can also devolve. I think,
Mm.
like you said, month, 2 months, 3 months. Yeah, yeah. That's why you make all these things practices. Like going to the gym, you make it a practice. And if you take 3 months off and you eat bonbons all day, it'll show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but then if you really then just cut all the bonbons and go back to clean eating and hitting the gym every day, that'll show.
Hmm.
Same
I
thing with the
think.
mind. The mind's even more plastic. The
Hmm.
mind, the mind. That's the interesting thing, man. Literally, this book is about that. It's about training your mind and your heart because we work so we do all this stuff. I want to be like plant based. I'm going to be keto. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. Right? I'm going to do like all these things for my body. I forget the thing that runs the show. The thing that runs the damn show is the one thing we pay the least attention to. Do we train the mind as we train the body? Now, if we took that kind of like dedication to our mind as we do to the body, what would life be like?
It's magic. That's how it is. And I only say that because I used to be someone who never trained his mind, was all about the body. And then starting September 2019, just training the mind in every way I could think of. It's a different person, right? and
Hmm.
you become a different person. I think 3 months, I think you're right. 1 month is when you see the results. I think 3 months is when everyone else says, "Oh shit, you've been doing that thing for how long have you been doing that thing?" And you're like, 3 months. Because I've noticed that for working out, it takes three months for people to notice. For doing the podcast, it took 3 months for people to realize. But yeah, that's the 3 month rule.
Yeah, but like for some people, 3 months might seem like a long time, but I would say like a month is enough that you have enough momentum
Yeah,
that you're like, holy shit, I changed a lot. I changed. Things changed. Like
yeah,
this is real. There's like it's a huge difference.
yeah. You're thinking that I'm making it the challenge too big for someone
You're making a
who's.
quarter basically. 3 months is a quarter, and that's more like a businessy thing. Um, one thing when I was doing startups, we used to have you have to have this when you're building a company or you have a team. You have to have milestones. And
Mm,
we would always have aggressive milestones because you would stretch to your milestones, not the other way around. And so if you make them very, very aggressive, and then you break the milestones down, it could be a year, then break that into quarters. But in a startup, usually it's like usually just a quarter because you're in the survival mode the entire time, or growth mode and survival mode the entire time. And a quarter, then you break that down into months, and then you take the
hmm.
month and break that down into weeks. Then you start every week and you say, okay, to hit this, to hit that milestone for the quarter, what do we have to do this week? Into that next month, into the week after that, right? And then you go to break it down to days, and you always start your, Monday that way with the team. Um, as, but I think honestly, like, but it's very hard to motivate people on a quarter, but you can
Mm,
motivate anyone a month. A month, anyone
mm.
can give to anything. That's why I think I found that for motivating teams were actually monthly sprints where we would have to we would just, okay, by the end of this month, we're going to accomplish this great thing. And knowing that that would lead to the next thing, which would then hit the quarterly goal. But you break it down
Mm.
into a month. Anyone can do anything for a month.
I like that. I like that. I'll keep that in mind. So for let's say you do you have a milestone for the practice? Is it just like to hit that 1 month mark or is it something else if you're starting the practice?
No, I mean, like the way I design in the book, it's a month. The whole thing
Hmm.
designs for a month, but it's designed to be loose. It's not like, I'm some drill sergeant, telling you this stuff. I was in the U.S. Army, so I can, I know what a drill sergeant's like. Uh, but it's no, it's I share with you exactly how I did it, how I do it each time, how you can replicate it. But then I always say like, then make it yours.
Hmm.
Take this. This is one man's experience. This is how it works for him. Now make it yours. And that's when I think it becomes even better.
Hmm. What do you say to people who say I love myself doesn't work for me? Because I know that was a common, not complaint, but that was a common query from people like I love myself isn't my own. What do you tell those people?
What do you mean by is it my own?
Like when someone is like it's hard for me to say I love myself or they're like it doesn't feel like something that I would say to myself.
Well, who does?
Yeah.
Naturally, right? That's why we need look, but by the way, you're falling into the trap of just saying like that's what this whole thing is about, just saying to yourself, I love myself, which is really not, which is why I wrote an expanded book on it. Um, it's you, what I'm guiding you to in the book is to experientially understand that you are actually generating this feeling. Whether someone makes you feel that way or whether you make yourself feel that way, you're the one generating this feeling. So training you to start generating in such a way that it becomes your norm or it
Hmm.
becomes more than not. And for some of us before it, we never really feel it. So the mind is really lazy and stuck in its patterns. And so it requires shaking the mind up a bit, and the mind rebels, and which is why I talk about it in the practice. I'm like, don't do this step until you just do this step for a day or two, because you're stepping into it. You're almost like training the mind. It's like, hey, don't do going to do 500-pound deadlifts, the first day.
Hmm.
You're going to break your back. Like the mind is even worse than that. It's really gets stuck in its grooves. So the people who say that, like, look, your practice, it sounds good, but not for me. I'm like, just try it. What do you got to lose? Worst case, you'll be right. Or worst
Yeah.
case, you'll be wrong. And you'll come out like, saying, hey, my life's magic, like just try it. Why not try it?
Yeah.
Why not try? Yeah, there's worse things to try than loving yourself. Let me say that.
It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're gonna try things that could potentially really make you better and transform your life. Never be,
Yeah.
like a pessimist on things that can actually make you better. That's like the worst pessimist. So you sit there being right about things that rather than being better. Even if, let's say, you try 10 things and one of them works that transforms your life, you know?
Don't lose
Um,
anything.
yeah, what have you lost? You tried. And then, boom, one thing worked, and look, you're better for it.
That's how approaching life becomes much more fun when you do it like that. When you've also said we don't talk in our society about how deep men love. And I think that is something that people were surprised about when I started tweeting, I love myself and I just want you to love yourself. And I started talking about this practice on the podcast, right? It's odd coming from a 25-year-old man. But what do you think we can do to change that?
Look, yeah, it's like it's not shown as much in movies. It's not shown much as media, and just like how deeply men feel. We're men. Like, look, we're meant to be like a man, and that's fine. I'm a man. I do shit. I build companies. I've been in the military. I climb mountains. I do this, but I also feel deeply when I love someone.
Mm.
Or when I have a broken heart. And often, you read like in suicide, a lot after divorces, a lot of men commit suicide. It's the man, because men feel so deeply, and it's something that we don't really talk about in our society. And there's less resources for men. And that's a shame. And I think honestly, I have a lot, like this book is in self-help, and I would say that a lot of my readers are women, but I have a lot of male readers too, because I write as a man.
Hmm.
And like I've had people like email me and say like, look, I'm in the military. I would never read a book about loving yourself, but I saw that I was in the military, so I thought I'd give it a shot. You know, um, yeah, I don't know how we change that. I think if we change that by being honest about it, I'm honest about mine in my books. Probably too honest. Honestly, but that's how we change it. We're honest about it. We're honest about our feelings as men. And there's a beauty to it. You can be a man and feel. There's nothing that says that being a man means you don't feel.
Where does that come from? That belief that men are strictly war, they're strictly strength, and they're not feeling. Where does that come from?
Oh, I don't
That
know. I mean, now we can get into society and all that. Who cares? It's like, what if you like?
you're all
Look, let's
about the practical. I
results.
like, yeah,
I want
I
results.
know.
What
I know you
you
are.
know? Yeah, yeah.
Fair. It's fair. No, it's totally fair. I know I've listened to enough interviews and I've read enough where you're just like practicality, practicality, practicality. I'm like, well, how do we consider this in the grander scheme? But I respect it
Well,
tremendously.
look, where I like to go dream in dreamland is like the nature of reality kind of stuff, because that's more like no one really knows the answer, and we're all trying to figure it out. That's where I like to like. I love jumping into non-practicality, but when it comes to the human self and how to improve, I'd rather stop trying to figure out how we got there. That can be we can do that in hindsight. I'd rather just figure out how we get out of it
Hmm.
and how do we get better. And that comes from, I think, a lot of my startup training, which was just solving problems. Building a startup is nothing but a series of solving problems every day. And you don't have time to sit around and figure out why you got there and the existentialist reason. And maybe you shouldn't have, 10 years ago, you should study something else in college. You don't. You just figure it out and you solve it.
Yeah. Makes sense. I I admire you for that, for the practicality aspect. It's probably why the book came out the way it came out, because you're just wondering, what can I do? Like, what is, I don't care about if it works or if it doesn't. I just want to know, what should I do? And if it works, I'm going to keep it and I'm going to put it in the book. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to put it in.
Well,
And that's
actually, I never set out to write a book about this. I did this
right,
practice, came up with it purely for myself.
right,
I wrote the book after the fact, after I knew it worked. And I was
right.
like, oh, I decided to share it with the world. And that was also, I was dragged to that kicking and screaming, really, because I thought I was going to be a big laughing stock in Silicon Valley. But the irony is, like, I have so many people in Silicon Valley reach out to me about how much this book
Mm,
has helped them. But no, I didn't set out to like, oh, I don't care if it works. I just wanted to get better. So I
right.
was willing to try anything. It's like I was watching this interview with Orson Welles, who in his 20s, I think it was 26 or maybe 24, when he did Citizen Kane, which is arguably known as the best movie ever made, and at that young age. And I was watching this interview with him, and the interviewer asked, like, how did you know to do these angles? No one had done these angles, these kind of shots. No one had even thought of it. How they were like, you're a genius, you're a genius. He's like, honestly, I didn't know any better. I didn't know I
Mm.
couldn't do it, you know? And I love that honesty. You don't get that these days. And that's what I tell the reason I came with this love myself practice was it was literally an attempt to save myself. I didn't know what would work, what didn't, so I just tried shit in my mind.
Mm.
You know, I didn't have the luxury to sit there and think about it. I was not in that place.
It's like, from the idea of not knowing, you can sometimes come up with the most brilliant insights. Uh,
Oh, I was talking to my brother about this. I mean, some of the best entrepreneurs, that you look back and think they were geniuses. They just did it because they didn't know they couldn't do it.
mm,
It's like that's actually a gift to not know because once you think you know you can't do something, it just stops you. It's like the 4 minute mile. People knew they couldn't break it, so they didn't until one guy did, and all of a sudden they started breaking it left and right. You know, what
mhm.
changed? Did human beings all of a sudden get faster? Like people are breaking left and right. Right after, I think a week later, someone else broke it. A week after that, someone broke it. Like, did human beings just suddenly evolve to be faster within a week?
The
No, it's
mind.
just, right.
It's all about the
So
mind.
it's almost better to not know what you can't do. That's why it's not good to be a pessimist,
Hmm.
because you have no idea what it's like. It's when you don't know what boundaries you can break is when you break them. Like what bounds, you can go off to space. Like the greatest of humankind, the things that have been created going beyond the boundaries of what people thought possible in art, in science, in literature, in everything. And so it's like you need that childlike mind. You need that wonder we talked about. You need that sense of not knowing any better.
Do you think that meditation gets you to that place of not knowing in some way?
I don't know. Meditation makes people better. Um, I don't
Because
know.
when you meditate, right, you're forgetting everything. You're forgetting the self, you're forgetting outside surroundings. You're just going inward and forgetting about everything for just a moment if you can, right? And so that place of not knowing anything, sometimes you'll come out of a meditation session like, holy smokes, I got to write this down. I got to write this down right now. Has that happened to you? And do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. The ideas and impulses come, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's such a thing as you forget yourself in meditation. I think the mind is too strong. You don't forget yourself. Um, you may cut out. You may stop paying attention to the chatter, but I
Yes,
don't think you
sure,
forget yourself.
sure.
Um, but yeah, like I've learned in meditation, when things come, pay attention to them, and you know, and but look, like what's a lot of like so much of breakthroughs in science and anything have been done not through leaps in creativity, leaps in imagination. Einstein, um, imagined what it'd be like if I was riding a bicycle at the speed of light and had a flashlight that he turned on. What would happen? and that led him down the rabbit hole. And look what he came up with. But think about that. He was imagining that. Think of what he was imagining. He was imagining riding a bicycle at the speed of light and turning on a flashlight. Ask himself, what happens? Because I'm already going at the speed of light. What happens to the light coming out of the flashlight? It's such an amazing imaginative activity, but it's pure imagination. It's not, it wasn't in front of a chalkboard writing math.
I wonder if he was in a meditative state, if he was taking a nap right before he was taking a nap or something like that.
I think he used to go for walks.
Is that what it was?
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he used to go for these long walks when he was a patent clerk. And a lot of people give long walks credits for creativity. A friend of mine who's a very successful screenwriter, he walks like 8 hours a day or something. That's where he comes up with a lot of his stuff.
Wow. I saw earlier in last month or a month ago is like when you walk or when you run, you're turning off the amygdala in some sense because the mind is pressing forward. And I'm not smart enough to know the science behind it, but I thought it was really interesting. And I said to myself, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Because if you think about it, when you're walking, you don't really, or running, you rarely feel fear. And
unless you got a tiger chasing you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it would make sense then evolutionarily if it would turn off that part of you.
Yeah, you're not thinking shit. You're just in one mode. Yeah.
So you've said that every person you admire who's successful radiates an inner happiness. They're living their truth.
I've never said that.
You never said that?
Radiates an inner happiness? No, I know a lot of successful people who are miserable.
Okay. Well,
I mean, isn't that true? I mean, there's plenty of people in society who are considered successful who are not happy.
No. Let me know if I have the quote right. If you misheard me, every person I admire who's successful and radiates an inner happiness, they are living their truth.
Yeah, because when you are living an expression of your true self, yeah, you do radiate. Yeah, that's true.
I think you wrote it. But my question is, who is
that
an
part?
example?
That sounds like something I would write. That part.
Yeah, you wrote the quote. Come on.
Well,
what do you
look,
mean?
man, I write books. Like, I don't remember every line, but I do remember the kind of things I would say. So I would never say that every successful person is happy. I know that.
No. No, the quote was successful and radiates an inner happiness. They're living their truth.
Okay. Yeah.
Not every person who's successful radiates an inner happiness. Of course not. So I wanted to know who was an example or some examples of people who you believe are successful and who radiate an inner happiness and who are living their truth, obviously.
I have some friends that I can think of, but they wouldn't be people you would know. And I'm not even sure if they'd want me to talk about it. But like, look, when you're living who you're on this. If you really feel like you're living who you're put on this planet for, to be, you live life differently.
Mm-hmm.
Those people stand out. This just, like this, when I say this, it just sounds right because it is common sense because we all know this intuitively. And we're living from that place. And I've lived that. Honestly, I've lived that place at times, and I know how life felt different when I'm living from that place. I don't live that place. Honestly, I don't live from that place all the time. But I know when I am living that place, how life feels. It feels remarkably different. It feels remarkably just like you feel more alive.
It's a powerful place to operate from. Kamal, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, this was a really interesting interview, honestly. Like, I enjoyed how you took it to outside of just, the usual. I enjoyed it. In fact, if you want to ask anything else, if you want to go off the tangent, I'm all for it.
Well, I appreciate everything you've done. And I appreciate the kind words. What tangent should we go on? I mean, The nature of reality seems to be your favorite one, and I enjoy hearing you riff on it. Um, but we kind of already covered that. So if you have any other thoughts on it, I'd love to hear
No, I'm still trying to figure it out.
them.
You know? And you know what? You know what? Sometimes I wonder what the whole point is, and I've actually written about this. I want. It's funny in my writing, I find the answers, but and I live them for a while, and sometimes I don't, and then I have to
Hmm.
go back and read, almost like read my own writing to myself. But you know, you just like, I don't know. Um,
It's really interesting, right? We don't
mhm.
journal. I rarely journal when times are good, when life is flowing. So I have to get that practice back. Like, oh, I have to do my morning pages when things are good too. Have you also found that issue of like, when times are good, it's harder to write because you're just so busy living life. And when times are bad, you are like, I need to tell someone about how shitty my life is. Has that happened for you or no?
No, no, I write when I have something to say, when I have
Gotcha.
something I want to write. So, um, yeah, and honestly, I don't journal.
Hmm.
So I've
Why
never been
not?
a I don't know, never been a journaler. I'm more of a writer where I want to just craft thoughts. I mean, I throw thoughts in my this note. I use this app called Notion, which is amazing. Which is basically takes over. You start using Notion, you'll never use another note writing app ever again. It's an amazing product. The tech guy in me just loves coming across beautiful products that are just done right. And on there, I have like these little, files where I'll just throw in thoughts. And who knows, they might build and lead on something, or they might not, but it's not journaling. It's more like reminders to myself, like, even reminders to myself, like, um, sometimes, I was thinking of Morpheus in the Matrix when he tells Neo, when he's training him, the first fight when they fight Kung Fu, and he's like, "Stop trying to hit me and hit me." It's such an incredible line, or that line where he goes, "Do you think that's air you're breathing?" And I write things like that to remind myself sometimes, just like what this whole show's about. But I'll do my own version of it. And this is purely just writing to myself. But that line, do you think that's air you're breathing? Is such a damn good line.
What do you think, if you had to guess, would your next book be about? Obviously, you have no idea, but what do you think is would be possible for you to write about next?
Look, that's a good question because I don't want to write about a guy who just falls down, gets up, and then writes about how to get up. I don't want to be that guy. I've done it. I've shown how to do it. It's enough. I think I want to. Maybe I'll write about the nature of reality.
Oh, I would
What
love
the
to read that.
but like in a practical way. I would get bored if it wasn't practical. Like, how do you apply? Trying to figure out what this whole thing is, but how do you apply to living that, to being better? That's what I care about. Not in theory, and not just like, hey, sit there and meditate and stare at your navel all day. Like literally, like how does that make your life better? Um, so if I figure that out, I'll write that. Maybe write a yeah. I mean, I may just do that for the fun of it and see if it's worth putting out. But it's
Well,
got to be real. It's got to be true. I got to have
mm,
tested it, and it's got to have worked. It can't
mm.
be. There's too much written from theory. Too many people writing as experts on shit. They sounds good, but I can write stuff that sounds good all day long. But if I'm not, it's not a reality. If I haven't tested, it's not a reality. I have no interest.
How do you differentiate as a reader? Okay, this is theory and this is reality.
You can
Obviously,
tell.
you test it yourself, but how do you tell?
You can tell. I'm also look. If you're a good reader, you can tell. You
Hmm.
can feel it. There's a lot of people though who market themselves these days. Everyone's got a coaching program. Everyone's got a, this or that, but they're teaching you all this other stuff, and people teaching you to be rich, and who only got rich by teaching people how to be rich.
Oh,
What I'm talking about.
yeah.
So,
That's what
so
you're talking about? That's nonsense. Anyone could see through that.
you
I'm
think so, but they make a lot of money. They
Yeah.
make a lot of money teaching people, and then it's the
Yeah.
same thing in other fields as well. But you can discern. One of the things that is actually really important quality in life is discernment. And Hemingway actually said this. A journalist asked him, "What's like the one thing a writer needs?" And he said, "The one thing a writer needs is a built-in, shock-proof bullshit detector.
Mm.
And if you can work in your bullshit detector, that's going to serve you well in life, and especially when it comes to learning from others." You know, And what I do is I look at people's lives. I look at how they're living. And the problem is these days everyone's living a social media life, and someone's
Mhm.
social media feed is not their life. It's a highly curated highlight reel. It's an ad. It's an ad unit. No one shows their life falling apart in an ad unit. Um, so it's harder and harder. Um, So I
Does
think you're
that?
just discerning, you develop,
Yeah.
and it's a skill. It's something you're born with. Women are very good at having intuition, and but like I think when they're younger, they don't listen to it. As they get older, they learn that they should listen to intuition. Men, I think we have to cultivate it more, but the intuition is a word that exists in cultures for a reason. We
Hmm.
do have a wiring inside for sensing things when they're bullshit or not. And one has to, I think a great skill is to learn to just listen to it more. Just listen to it more and follow it. When you sense it, your spidey sense tingles, listen to it. Listen to it. Listen to it. It's a skill that you start to trust more. And it's you. It's your thing. It's your spidey sense.
Hmm.
And especially when learning from others. Um, yeah.
So if you're reading a book and your intuition is like, I don't trust this, do you put it down?
Um, I mean, look, every book, no, because you can always learn. If
Hmm.
I can learn from it to be better, I will. But I very rarely even will read a book if I get the
Right.
sense that this author is coming from. You can tell the people who are selling themselves versus people who are real. There's plenty of real people out there, you know, that are actually like, what they share is true. Um, yeah, I think the answer is not as clear. I would just say like, look, if it's a great skill to have and to work on is to work on your own bullshit detector and then apply that towards, what you want to learn.
Going back to the social media, does it bother you that people are curating their lives that aren't actually them? You've written so authentically and so real and so honest, like this is what I went through. Does it bother you when someone is like putting up a front and putting, and I'm sure you could see right through it, but does it bother you?
No, that's their life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't bother me. I'm gonna be me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, uh, we're all shit shows trying to do our best. You know? Like
What a
that's what it
line. I'm gonna clip that, Kamal.
is. We're just all shit shows trying to do our best. So that's where compassion comes in, man.
Yep.
And you start to realize that you just naturally have compassion.
Beautiful. Um, last thing,
Uh-huh.
you I love what you say about grabbing your phone and going onto social media, which is what you seek is not there. Do you still
Oh
say
yeah.
that to yourself? Um, and where did you come up with this? Because this is brilliant and something that I think about to this day.
These are just lines that come in my head that I throw in my notes. But it was something that I noticed I was like doing a lot. I'd be sitting there, I would just grab my phone and start looking at it. I'd grab my phone, start looking at it. When it was like, what you're seeking is not in there, you know?
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I should tweet that. And so I tweeted. Yeah. So I did, but to see it, to find it, you have to pick up your phone and see it.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but yeah, like look, these days, like I've been spending a lot of time on Clubhouse, but Clubhouse is interesting because it's a connection there's a connection that happens with people. Like the conversation you and I are having right now, there's a connection happening. Clubhouse allows you that, which is true rarity in social media. Nothing else in social media allows that kind of honest connection, which is why I like it, and I'm still exploring it and playing around with it because I think there's something there for people who want to be real and have real conversations, there's room there for that. That unlike like you can get on there and do your highlight reel, but it's harder to bullshit people where you're just talking on the cuff.
My hardest thing with Clubhouse is figuring out who's real and who to trust. But I honestly haven't spent much time on the app. Is that something that you just picked up because you have a great discernment filter, or was that something that
Well,
stopped
no,
you?
I go for what am I curious about? If
Hmm.
someone has a room and a topic I'm curious about, I'll hop in. If not, I won't. There's people I'm very curious about what they say. Like when, Mark Andreessen's talking or,
Hmm.
certain other people are talking. I'm curious what they have to say. They're really smart people. I like learning from them. Um, but usually I just I'll hop in a lot of rooms I'll hop in, they'll invite me to come speak and sometimes say yes, sometimes I say no. Um, but I just started I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to open my own room and just talk with people about whatever. So one night I opened a room randomly, like I was about to go to sleep. I was like, let me just open a room, see if anyone pops in. And you know what? A bunch of people pop in. I'm like, shit, now I guess I want to stay up. And so the first person and I, we just start talking about poetry. I was like, you know what? We're going to make this room about poetry. We're just going to talk poetry. So some poor kid came on and he was talking about like venture capital, how to get. I was like, dude, no. It's like midnight for me. Poetry only, no venture capital. If you want to talk to me poetry to me. So it was like whatever's interesting. I just open a
Yeah.
room and talk about that, which is kind of cool. Hey, conversations with human beings connecting is such a
Hmm.
fundamental language, such a human thing. It's
Hmm.
such a core human thing to connect with sharing of ideas. Um, so that's I think why what I like to do on there, just open random rooms and have a conversation. Like I did one yesterday called Writers Room, where I invited a bunch of my Hollywood buddies, screenwriters. Let's talk about how to write a great character. Let's try it out. Let's see how it goes.
Well, I'll definitely be trying it out now. You've sold me. You've given me the good sales pitch and the good sell.
Look,
And
you're good. Just open a room and with a topic you want to talk about, and see what
yeah,
happens. See
no,
what
I love
serendipity
it.
results.
The
You know.
reason why this podcast started was because I just tweeted out who wants to talk on the phone, and people were like, dude, that was a great conversation. I was like, yeah, it was. Let's record that. And so that's this. And that's why this came to be. So I
How do
would
you
love
do
to
it
do it.
3 times a week? That's really grueling schedule.
So I kind of look at it um like a basketball player or just like any athlete, right? It's like it looks like hard work to us because they're going to the gym early, they're staying late, they're doing all this stuff, but to them it's just like they're having fun with it. This is fun. There's nothing grueling about having a conversation. It is really fun for me. I'm so energized right now. It's 1:30 in the morning as we're recording, but it's like there's nothing else I'd rather be doing than having a conversation with someone who's interesting. And when you look at it from that perspective of fun, of really just like this is the most fun thing in the world. I could do it 7 times a week. I could do this all day. I love having conversations with people who make me think. And that, my friend, is what you've done. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. I truly appreciate you, man. And I'm really grateful for your presence in this world.
Thanks, man. This was a real pleasure. I'm really glad I did this.
Awesome. And I always ask, where can people find you, Kamal? I know they're going to want more of you after this entire bonanza. So where
Well,
where do you want to direct the people?
I would say good if you want to learn more about what we talked about, get love yourself like your life depends on it. That's all me in there. My email address is in there. Feel free to email me. I always respond. I'm sometimes late, but I do. Then the usual Instagram, Twitter, just my name, Kamal Ravikant, or Clubhouse, where you
Mm,
we could just hang out and chat sometime. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm pretty approachable, on social media. Just
you
email,
are.
just message me.
You are. I've tagged you a bunch and blown you up over the past, I don't know, 11 months since I've
Thank you.
and and you respond, you like my stuff, and I'm like, I'm mind blown every time and truly appreciated. So yeah, hit this man up, read his stuff, And thank you,
Well,
Kamal.
I would say if you read the book, like really just give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I put so much into that. There's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
I almost died putting that book out, not because of the book, but I did. And I really felt like I would have left the earth with having left behind a beautiful gift. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about this book. And, just if you read it, apply it. Just apply it for a month and just then tell Dan, tweet at us and let us know how it worked. You don't need a month and let us know.
Yes, absolutely do that. I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone who listened and applied it. And yeah, this has been great.
Thank you, man.
That was my conversation with Kamal Ravikant. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it. And if you have feedback for this episode, let me know on Twitter. @HeyDannyMiranda is the best place to find me. And before you go, also, I've just started to post video episodes of the podcast to YouTube. This episode, there's no video version, unfortunately, but most other episodes will have video components. And if you'd like more of that, you can go to youtube.com/Danny Miranda to find the video versions of most podcasts. And I'd appreciate it tremendously if you would subscribe. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention until the final seconds. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.